Right, let's get to it. The PSVR 2 is good, very good in fact. One of the best VR headsets ever made for the price. If you have a PS5 and are craving a new experience with technology that takes the virtual experience up a notch and you can afford it, well, get one. But you probably already knew all that. You probably already checked out reviews, breakdowns, and unboxings, and the question isn't whether you should invest in the PSVR 2, but whether you should invest in VR as a whole. My name is Zainel. Join me and my friends for a gamification look at Sony's brand new device and the state of the VR landscape. Firstly, I'd like to thank our growing subscriber family and invite any new viewers to join the fold. It's pretty relaxed around here, full of friendly, like-minded people who enjoy a diverse range of titles. If you're the same, click that subscribe button and come say hey. Also, some transparency, PlayStation UK provided me with a PSVR 2 headset. PlayStation has had no say in regards to the content within this video. They're watching this at the same time as you. When a new console generation begins, there's a ton of excitement in the air. A new Sony, Microsoft or Nintendo console shifts the industry focus and developers tool up and craft the next level of immersion and interactivity. People gather their belongings for midnight launches, promotional materials are everywhere, and even the mainstream media show a keen interest in the latest technological spectacle. With each console generation, limitations of what developers can create are lifted. In the early days, we had to use our imaginations to infer how characters were feeling, and developers had a limited set of animations they could use to convey a myriad of emotions. Now, due to the advancements in motion and performance capture, games like God of War Ragnarok feature award-winning character performances, brimming with the subtlety and nuance needed to convey the complex relationships at play. This is what we always imagined our games felt like, now brought to life in high fidelity. And that's the key, how games make us feel. They have an incredible ability to engage us with worlds far beyond our own reality. Virtual reality promises to take us to these unique, fully rendered 3D environments. Over the generations, like their console counterparts, we've gotten closer and closer to that reality. Players no longer have to imagine a drab, eerie village. We can now go there with VR enriching these virtual worlds through haptic sensations, incredible art, and sound design. However, unlike their console brethren, every launch of a new VR device doesn't quite have that same mainstream buzz, despite the promises they're making. Why is that? I think it's important to identify the landscape the PSVR 2 is dropping into to help us answer the question: what is the state of the VR landscape? So, where did I start? My personal journey with VR began with a humble cardboard contraption known as Google Cardboard. Now, I know what you're thinking, cardboard? But hear me out. With scaled down modes within apps like Google Earth and YouTube, Google Cardboard was the perfect entry point into the world of virtual reality. And the best part, it was super cheap. In fact, Google even provided a guide on their website so you can make your own. I know, I'm frugal, innit? As a kid, I read about groundbreaking VR and 3D devices like the Sony Glastron and the Famicom 3D system in video game magazines. They were a bit like the Neo Geo. Everybody knew about them, but nobody actually knew anybody that owned one. Plus, the technology was so new back then that now we don't even consider them true virtual reality. So, I've enlisted the help of some close friends with extensive gaming knowledge and asked them to help us delve into why this medium has yet to become an essential purchase and how it seeks to transform the gaming landscape. But first, what were their first experiences with virtual reality?
What was my first VR experience? I want to say Paranormal Activity, The Lost Soul.
Whoa, you started with the horror.
Yeah, I did. I feel like the reason I remember Paranormal Activity as one of the first experiences is because it wiped out all other thoughts of VR before that, because that was just such an intense one. Honestly, I can't remember the first time I touched one. Other than that, still one of the scariest games I've ever played because it was in VR.
See, I have an older brother. He had a Virtual Boy. I always imagined it just being on this like top of a plinth with like a light. and there was like a do not touch sign on it that I basically was not allowed to touch, boy. And I remember one time he was feeling generous, and he said to me, he was like, do you wanna have a go? Do you wanna see what it looks like? And I remember putting the scope on to my eyes, just playing like this shooting game. At the time, it was like, wow, like you know, you were completely mesmerized. We were quite into Tron and Blade Runner and those kind of things at the time. And yeah, like I just remember seeing that, and we even from then used to be like, wow, like imagine if like one day like we get to this point where like games are a whole new world, like, you know, you completely disappear from reality and you're into this next place.
My first VR experience, I think it's Rush of Blood, which was an Until Dawn spin-off by Supermassive, and it was on a rails shooter. So I think you're actually in like a rail carriage, like a mine cart, and you're going through, and there's like Wendigos, and lots of the characters pop up and they're whispering in your ears. You have to shoot things with your two guns with your Move controllers, and I can remember being very yelpy. I was screaming a lot. But that was my first single standalone experience in VR, with something that I could actually take home with me.
It's crucial to distinguish between the various types of VR and where the PSVR 2 now sits amongst them. Much like consoles, not every system is built the same or supports the same kinds of user experience, which can be unclear from the outside looking in. Going back to my cardboard, Nintendo later carried on the Creative Cardboard VR concept with their Labo range. Users could customize and craft unique cardboard contraptions, insert a Nintendo Switch device into a makeshift headset, and play mini games and unique modes for Breath of the Wild, Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Captain Toad.
I was quite fortunate. I did a YouTube series for Nintendo called Nintendo Labo UK. I was joined by my co-host Frankie, and we got to essentially really divulge and really understand what Nintendo Labo was. The sort of three key pillars that they had for it were make, play, and discover. And the whole concept is that, as you said, like, you know, like with the Google stuff, is that you made your device, but then from the first initial phase of it, that's when they moved on to creating a VR experience of it. So it was kind of like they first taught you, okay, this is a thing, and we want you to really think about not just obviously playing a video game, but they wanted to get kids to get really creative physically with their hands, and, you know, get their parents and friends and stuff involved. And then you had the make part, then the play part, obviously with the games on the Switch, and then discover, which was a whole another section where you could actually then program games and you could actually customize whatever it was you wanted to do and see, and they incorporated VR within that as well. The actual thing was called the Toy-Con Garage, and you could literally, like an actual gaming programmer, you could, you know, connecting inputs and outputs, like there was a full-on screen, like you could connect one square to say press A to then another box that says make character jump. So you would, you know, it was really, really in depth, and it really, again, on a level that kids of all ages and adults as well could get a real understanding of make, play, and discover, essentially.
Much like Google's venture, however, Nintendo ended support for Labo VR after just 3 years. A step up from the cardboard applications was Samsung's Gear VR. At the time, anyone with a flagship Samsung device could jump into a bespoke set of Oculus titles in VR, even including a custom controller to bring the VR experience to the masses. Often, these headsets were bundled with new phone contract deals. The library was filled with free-to-play and premium titles such as the BAFTA-nominated Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. These were the first portable and wireless VR headsets that provided fun excursions away from regular gaming. However, due to the nature of these devices relying on the mobile phone to power everything, graphically, these titles were a far cry from the future that science fiction promised us. They were fun for a time, but soon the 5 million units Samsung shifted throughout the world gathered dust in people's houses and were unable to support the growing number of newer mobile devices. The execution was advanced for its time, but it failed to light a fuse in consumers. In 2020, the Gear VR was discontinued. Most of these devices can be found on eBay for a fraction of the release price. The HTC Vive was the first consumer room VR headset I had direct access to. This groundbreaking VR headset introduced me to the concept of room scale VR, which relies on external tracking sensors to map out a 3D zone in which the user can move around. It's one of the most immersive VR experiences out there, allowing the player to jump, duck, and move around the environment. You might have seen the Vive units used for some of the most cutting-edge arcade experiences, like Mario Kart VR. These experiences are next level, offering a sense of immersion that's hard to describe. The PlayStation VR 2 sits somewhere between room scale and a seated gameplay style. It allows the user to move around a predetermined space, but it lacks the sensory capacity to detect movement outside its own field of view. For gamers new to virtual reality, the PSVR 2 is a great entry point, but with a price tag of over £500 for the headset alone, they'll want to know that they're getting a truly transformative experience. So, what do you get? The contents of the actual box are pretty minimal. You get the usual reading materials, the PSVR 2 headset itself, and 2 Sense controllers, one for each hand. Outside of that, you get a single USB-C cable to charge the controllers and some wired earbuds that handily slot into the headset for safe storage. The headset is impeccably designed, and the engineering of the PSVR 2 is hard to falter. It feels like a premium piece of technology, yet pretty light like the original PSVR 2 headset. My favorite new addition is that it connects to the PS5 by a single hardwired USB-C cable. This implementation is significantly slicker than the previous iteration's pass-through box and assortment of wires. You definitely had to be in the mood for VR with the original. Many of the popular headsets you can currently buy offer wireless experiences. The PS5 single USB-C cable has the best wired solution I've come across. It's easy and light to maneuver out of the way and seems like it can be replaced if there happens to be any significant wear. The OLED displays are incredibly immersive. In other headsets I've worn, you tend to get a screen door effect with their LCD color displays. Dark lines that are caused by the gaps between pixels on a screen. Here, this just isn't the case. The black levels are pitch black, and no doubt horror VR titles will benefit from this the most with Sony's implementation here. Not that I'm likely to give them a go, if my previous experience with horror VR is anything to go by. Hold on, I can't highlight that one. Oh, I knew it! Oh! Ah! 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 I knew it! Ah! Yeah.
Last 3.
What are you doing? Oh, where's my gun?
That's big.
Oh! Come on, get it here. No.
Amazing!
Nah. Oi. Oi! What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What?
Last shell.
Come on.
Out of shells.
Where are you? Where are you? Yeah? Yeah?
Last 3.
Yeah? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? There it is!
One left. No more minutes.
Oh my God! What? Whoa! Hold on! I will say there is a bit of a sweet spot with this device due to the type of Fresnel lenses used. If it's not sat on your face just right, you will get some fringing or various chromatic effects, most evident with text on the screen. Thankfully, the unit has multiple adjustability tweaks that can help you sit the unit just right. The back brace can be tightened or loosened, and the main unit can be adjusted to bring the headset closer. The lenses themselves can also be changed, and the UI walks you through this process seamlessly. The controllers are nicely designed and a huge step up from the PS3 Move controllers of old. Gone are the glowing balls or the use of a separate PS4 camera. Although picking up the controllers can take some getting used to. Due to the shape, they aren't as easy to distinguish between one another at a glance. The initial setup screen identifies which controller is which, but once setup is completed, they are no longer labeled in the pass-through mode. Hopefully, this can be added in a future update. Also, a minor nitpick is that bringing your hands together can be cumbersome due to the rings. This isn't a deal breaker, but when steadying your aim for single-handed weapons such as a pistol, it can be more unwieldy and slightly take you out of the immersion. As stated earlier, the onboarding process is simple and elegant, and gets the user straight into being able to use the peripheral very quickly. A highlight is the eye tracking system, which can also aid in menu navigation for many titles. From an accessibility point of view, I'd love to see more developers utilize this as a control method for games, as the implementation works so well once the unit is calibrated to your head. The setup tutorial is clean and reminiscent of the primary PS5 user experience. However, it does lack the personality many other headsets provide, especially if this is your first time in VR. There are no fancy tech demos, personable robot characters, or softly spoken narrators to guide you through your VR journey. You're just plonked onto a VR-optimized version of the PS5 dashboard you're already familiar with. It works well if you've experienced VR before and want to get straight into the games, but personally, I felt PlayStation missed a step with this. Astrobot is the ideal PlayStation mascot to guide players through utilizing the VR headset, much like he did on the original PSVR and DualSense controller. Here, the process is quick, but doesn't help that the device does not come preloaded with any full titles for the price you pay. Horizon Call of the Mountain should have been that title bundled with the device, as when it comes to showcasing the power of the new PlayStation VR 2, it is undoubtedly a showstopper. If you've seen any of Sony's recent marketing, you've probably caught a glimpse of the game's stunning visuals and breathtaking vistas. And let's be real, it really is a beautiful game. The high-resolution displays in the headset transport you to the Horizon world like no other VR title has before.
You got me. Now I can hit it where it hurts. Come on. That should help. That's a spot.
From the haptic feedback in the headset and controllers to the immersive 3D audio. Horizon takes full advantage of all the unique features that make VR such an exciting platform. But as a longtime gamer and VR enthusiast, I have to admit that Horizon doesn't exactly break new ground when it comes to gameplay. Sure, climbing a towering mountain and taking in the stunning views is a treat, but we've seen plenty of VR experiences that offer similar thrills. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate that all games build upon the innovations that came before them. But in the world of VR, players are hungry for experiences that transport them to entirely new dimensions of their imagination. And unfortunately, Horizon doesn't quite deliver that level of freshness and novelty that we've come to expect from the best VR titles. If this was wholly a brand new property, and we didn't have the fantastic Horizon Forbidden West PS5 outing in 2022, this would undoubtedly be a system seller. But if, like me, you've spent many hours exploring this vibrant world front to back, seeing it realized in VR is amazing, but not entirely new. That being said, I still think Horizon is an excellent showcase for what the PlayStation VR 2 is capable of. As I've said numerous times already, this is a visually stunning game that highlights all the platform's strengths, and for many players, it'll be their first foray into the exciting world of VR. Oh, I'm jealous. I had the cardboard. Other launch titles fared better for me, with there being quite a diverse range of experiences. I will note though, many of which were ported titles that can be played on other VR headsets.
Another amazing one is Moss as well, which actually has had an update for the PSVR 2. So that's a really good one for a lot of people to try.
I agree, Moss is an absolute joy to play from the comfort of your sofa, presenting a mix of diorama-esque puzzles and platforming for the player to navigate with Quill. It's a great title to gently introduce VR, but it's not a game that solely depends on the new PSVR 2's features, as it was a game released in 2018 on PlayStation's original headset. Gran Turismo 7 is probably the best time I've had with the PSVR 2 to date, throwing you onto the virtual race circuit each time you start a race. The tracks I've driven around numerous times before now suddenly have a new sense of life to them. The scale seems bigger and your car's interior lights up as your opponents dazzle you in your rear view, much like in real life when a new EV driver dazes you with their high beams. Although I don't own a racing wheel, I imagine this would definitely heighten the illusion to another level. Polyphony Digital has also added new AI racers called Sophie in a new separate racing mode, whose multiple personalities come into play depending on your driving style. Think Forza's Drivatars, but more reactive within the moment. Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge is probably the best constructed launch title for the PSVR 2. However, again, it's been enhanced from other VR storefronts. It includes a plethora of settings to enable play in a seated or full room scale, complete with adjustable torso height. The developers have truly considered what an action puzzle game set in the Star Wars universe could feel like from the comfort of your own home. This is a tightly crafted adventure with solid gunplay mechanics and an engrossing gameplay loop. Unsurprisingly, this title was built by ILM, who are no strangers to combining the Star Wars franchise with VR.
It was a company called The Void that had some sort of collaboration with Lucasfilm and ILM, and they had a Star Wars experience, which was massive. Not just because it was Star Wars, but massive as in like the atrium's really big. And we basically were wearing our own standalone mini PCs as backpacks, had headsets. Everything was tracked. It's probably one of the most high-end VRs I've ever used, to the point where we were being the resistance, but you had to like infiltrate as a stormtrooper. So once you got into the play area, there was me and two other people, and really stupidly, the first thing we figured out is that we could see each other. Like, as in they were there, we could touch them, but we looked like stormtroopers. And me and my friend started playing Patter Cake because obviously we had stormtrooper hands, we had bodies, it was tracking everything. The entire experience was like going to a live theatre experience. But you'd go into different situations and you'd be like, sit down on the bench, and you'd sit on the bench, and the bench in VR was obviously there in real life because you sat on something. Or quick, someone's coming, grab a gun. You grabbed a gun from the rack because you saw it in VR and it was there in real life. And it was the most immersive experience, although VR is super immersive anyway, on so many levels, not just like for the tactileness and the fact that people were moving in real time and being mapped with their characters in real time for each of us, but we also went into different rooms that had things like different temperatures. Like we landed on like a volcano planet and like the ship's door opened and immediately like the heat just hit us. They must have had like a load of, like, now your granny's got those little electric bar heaters, just a load of those across the wall, because the minute you walked in, it felt like you were on a freaking planet that had volcanoes everywhere. It was the most effortless to enjoy, and once you were in, you really felt like you were in it. I think it was also down to the fact that because it was hand tracking, we didn't have controllers. So it felt very natural to be in another situation, almost like you're dreaming, like you've been transported somewhere else and you're experiencing this now. This is your reality.
Being transported to another reality is what Media Molecule's Dreams does so well. Like Nintendo Labo VR, it provides tools to craft your own VR world, where you can immerse yourself in any setting you can dream up. Dreams on the PS4 also boasts an extensive list of VR experiences, from escape rooms to shooting galleries. There's something for everyone. The only downside, you can't utilize the new PSVR 2 headset with the title containing the most user-created VR content. I know! If you own an original PSVR headset, you can acquire a cable from Sony, which allows you to utilize it with the PS5. Still, Sony's latest VR venture is incompatible and unlikely to receive an update to support it. But that's not to say Dreams on the original PSVR headset isn't exceptional in its own right. It's a testament to the incredible potential of virtual reality and the community's creativity that so many exciting creations can be explored. Of course, there are other VR titles like Dreams out there that I wish we could experience on the PSVR 2. For every Moss that has received an update, there is a lone Echo exclusive to other platforms. And while there are unofficial methods to access many of these PC-based titles, it can be a hassle for the average consumer. Exclusivity is understandable with VR, but it causes a bit of a catch-22 problem. Without a high-density player base, we simply won't see innovation at the rate early VR adopters would need to justify their purchase. Video games are way too expensive to dedicate millions in budget plus years of developer time to an experience most people won't touch. But if VR isn't invested in, the potential of VR is still in its early stages. Some companies have given up, as we've seen, but others are still yet to join. Rumors abound that even Apple is planning to release its own VR device soon, with its own exclusive applications. We can only hope that someday all VR platforms will become compatible with each other and that the experience of virtual reality will truly become mainstream. Here's hoping. Virtual reality is a unique and personal experience, one that is hard to articulate through traditional mediums like gameplay trailers or screenshots. It's an immersive world that engages our senses in a way that traditional media simply can't match. During the pandemic, when real-world interactions were limited, virtual reality stepped in and offered a sense of comfort and connection for many across the globe. It allowed people to hang out with friends in virtual worlds to escape the confinements of the real one. Unfortunately, over the years, many companies have tarnished the potential glow of what VR could become. Meta's history with VR is well documented, and many know of their lack of success in bringing the metaverse to fruition. Although they were one of the pioneers in VR with the Oculus series of headsets, they failed to maintain their lead and have been overtaken by competitors. The idea of a metaverse, a shared virtual space where people can interact and engage with each other in a seamless digital world, isn't inherently a dreadful one. Companies like Second Life and even PlayStation 3's Home have attempted shared worlds outside of VR in the past, but the metaverse's poor visual fidelity, lack of innovation, and intrinsic relationship to crypto put a sour taste in the mouths of many consumers. And without real-world regulations and safety precautions, those projects seem insidious and destined to fail. It may be a few generations before we genuinely see a platform the majority are eager to adopt after the failure of such a high-profile company. But despite the challenges that face VR, many still believe in the potential of the medium. They see it as a new frontier for human interaction, where we can explore new forms of identity, creativity, and social connection.
Yes, 100,000,000,000% it is going to succeed. And that is not just as a VR enthusiast, that is as someone who can easily see that companies are getting it wrong, trying it again, some things getting right, getting it wrong again, trying again. It's literally at the point where it's so much more accessible and mainstream because there are easier units that you can get that are inside out tracking, plugging it straight into your PlayStation with the PSVR 2, new controllers that are so much better.
The PSVR 2 may have its work cut out for it, but I reckon Sony is best poised to be the company that can finally bring VR to the gaming mainstream. After all these years of test cases and false starts across the entire industry though, ultimately the success of VR will depend on whether gamers are willing to invest in the technology and embrace its potential.
You know, they're not cheap. They are very expensive, and when you do get one of those devices, you want to feel like that you've got something that you've really invested in, and that there's a whole, variety of games. I mean, there is a variety of really cool things on all VR headsets around, but to invest that much money with a market at the moment that is so competitive, I think cost is definitely a huge barrier for the majority of them,
Something that I tend to use my headset for, which isn't technically gaming, although it's gamified, is there are a lot of mental health and well-being apps. So guided meditation, breathing, just ways to quiet down your brain, to kind of get outside the outside noise. I think one of the best things you can do is actually meditate in VR.
Companies are starting to do it the right way here and there. They haven't got there yet. There are a lot of companies like Metaverse that are just throwing loads of money into it and names into it, thinking it's going to sell because of the brand and the name. But that's not how it works. Once they start nailing the mainstream audience's preferences and ease of access in the next, I'd say 5 years, that it more than doubles in its user base.
Things you will always get in a VR game: hit list, some kind of rhythm game. Beat Saber's amazing. It can be modded and it's brilliant, and there are a load of other games along those sides. Fitness games, again, movement based, because you've got your arms tracking, you can dodge your head, you can do all those sort of things. First person shooters. There are so many first person shooters in VR, either online, multiplayer, or solo single player. However, I think that's because they are the easiest to translate to a non-VR gaming audience. A good example would be Left 4 Dead or sister game Back 4 Blood. If you wanted to play that in a VR situation, next sort of like kinfolk game over would be something like After the Fall.
The other major thing is making it very clear to the consumer, let's say, about what your device is all about. Something like a PS VR 2 is very different in terms of what its capabilities are to something like a Labo VR headset.
VR isn't part of everyday life. Will it be one day in the future? Very possibly. It's used for training all sorts of things, from flight simulators to surgeons these days. I keep seeing someone come up on my TikTok going through evacuation and fire safety simulations in VR as an air steward on a plane, going through all the different things and all the scenarios, and obviously like talking to passengers and everything. Like, there are so many wonderful ways that VR can be implemented into real life. Are we ready to go full Ready Player One? 100% not. But I do feel like at some point we're going to be wanting to experience things in our recreational time, similar to something like the holodeck from Star Trek, where you're literally in a room that has a projection of a space put into it. And a VR headset is just a personalized holodeck, really. And when you think about the amount of things that from sci-fi have become science fact 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see where VR goes. Professionally, I think it's obviously got a future in terms of training. Consumer-wise, I still think it's going to stay quite niche. In terms of like a gamer's wish list, sometimes VR's pretty far down on it, or not there at all.
Despite the challenges, one thing is clear. The potential of virtual reality is simply too amazing to ignore. Whether it's exploring new worlds or connecting with others in immersive environments, VR has the power to transform the way we experience media and interact with one another. The future of VR may be uncertain, but the possibilities are endless. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on VR? Have you dabbled before? Do you own or plan on picking up a PSVR 2 or any other headset? Let me know your thoughts, opinions, and experiences in the comments below. I look forward to reading them. If you enjoyed watching this and you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe to the Gamification YouTube channel, where I'll be bringing you more videos like this one to your subscription box. Thank you to Her Name is Malula, Cyborg Angel, and Nims for their contributions. Make sure to catch them all over on Twitch and tell them that I sent you. A big thank you to PlayStation UK once again, and thank you for watching. I've been Ainel. Take care.